Welcome to POV Stories. This one requires you to sit with your assumptions before you sit with the story. It's worth it. You meet her at a farmer's market in Silver Lake on a Saturday morning in September, which is the most ordinary possible beginning for something this specific. You are 34 years old, from Portland originally, living in Los Angeles for 6 years now, working as a sound engineer for a mid-size recording studio in Burbank that does everything from indie albums to commercial jingles to the occasional film score. You are there for the heirloom tomatoes because your roommate told you they were better than anything at Whole Foods, and your roommate is usually right about produce. She is 2 stalls ahead of you examining a bunch of rainbow chard with the focused attention of someone who actually knows what good chard looks like, which most people at farmers markets do not. Most people at farmers markets being there for the atmosphere rather than the vegetables. You notice her the way you notice specific people in crowds, not because of how she looks, though she is striking, but because of the quality of her attention. She is entirely present with the chard. She is not on her phone. She is not performing the farmers market experience for anyone. She is just there, in the September morning, deciding about vegetables with the seriousness of someone for whom deciding about vegetables matters. You say something about the chard. Something accurate and slightly nerdy about how rainbow chard is more about visual appeal than flavor difference from regular Swiss chard, which you know because you went through a cooking phase 3 years ago that you have never quite exited. She looks at you. She has brown eyes that do the thing where they assess before they warm, which you will learn is not suspicion but the learned caution of someone who has had a great deal of experience with people whose interest in her is not actually about her. She says, "That's true. I'd buy it anyway because it makes me happy to look at." You say that's a completely valid reason. She says, "Most valid reasons aren't complicated." And she moves to the next stall. You follow, which you recognize as slightly forward, which you do anyway because the sentence was genuinely interesting, and interesting sentences are rare enough that pursuing them is worth the social risk. You talk for 40 minutes at and between stalls, and you learn that her name is Jade, just Jade, she offers no surname, and you don't ask, that she grew up in Bakersfield, that she has a degree in communications from Cal State Northridge that she completed while working full-time, that she has a rescue greyhound named Cosimo who is anxious in thunderstorms and requires specific management, that she has been cooking seriously for 2 years and approaches recipes the way an engineer approaches specifications. Read the whole thing first, understand the logic, then execute. You tell her about the sound engineering. She asks intelligent questions about the physics of acoustics, which almost nobody does, which tells you the communications degree was not the limit of her curiosity. She does not tell you what she does for work. You do not ask, because you have been in Los Angeles long enough to understand that what people do for work is not always the first thing they want to offer, and that asking too early is a specific kind of rudeness this city has normalized that you have decided to resist. You exchange numbers. She texts that evening to say the chard made an excellent frittata. You say you're glad to hear the rainbow version contributed something beyond aesthetics. She sends back a single laughing emoji, and then a recipe she modified from the base she used, with notes in the margins of the screenshot about what she changed and why. You look at those margin notes for a long time after she sends them because they tell you something about the quality of her mind that the farmer's market conversation only suggested. You go on 4 dates before she tells you. The dates are the kind of dates that remind you why dating is supposed to be interesting. A Tuesday evening at a Thai place in Los Feliz where you talk about the specific challenge of recording strings in a room with poor acoustics, and she explains the semiotics of food photography with the precision of someone who has thought about image and perception professionally, though she does not say this yet. A Sunday morning walk with Cosimo along the LA River path, the greyhound moving with the particular aristocratic efficiency of a breed built for speed now mostly deployed for ambling, and Jade laughing when he stops dead for no apparent reason and refuses to continue for 4 minutes. A Thursday evening at a bookshop in Echo Park where you spend 2 hours in different sections, and then show each other what you found, which is the fastest way to understand someone's mind that you know. A Wednesday at your studio where she sits in the control room while you work a session and afterwards asks about the difference between what the microphone hears and what the ear hears, and you spend an hour explaining the physics and psychoacoustics of recorded sound to someone who has actually absorbed everything you said, which almost never happens. On the 5th date she tells you. You are at her apartment in Los Feliz, the first time you have been there, which is itself significant because she controls the geography of her life with precision and her apartment is her real space, the space that is actually hers. And Cosimo is on the couch between you with the self-satisfied expression of a greyhound who has decided the humans can work around him. And she has made the pasta she described from the modified recipe, and it is as good as the margin notes suggested it would be. And after dinner she sets down her wine glass and she looks at you with the assessing before warming expression, and she says, I need to tell you something about my work before this goes further. Because it will come out eventually and I would rather it came from me. She tells you. She tells you directly and without apology, and without the performance of shame that you will later understand she has been asked to perform by almost everyone who has found out, and that she has refused to perform because performing shame for other people's comfort is a transaction she decided years ago she would not make. She tells you her professional name, which is not Jade. Jade is her actual name, the one her mother gave her, the one that belongs to her life and not to her work. She tells you she has been in the adult film industry for 4 years. She tells you she entered it as a decision she made with full information and not under duress, and that she has been treated well by the company she works with, and that she has also experienced things she would not choose to repeat, and that both of these things are true simultaneously, and the industry contains the full range of human experience the way most industries do, but without the protection or the respect. She tells you this not to justify herself but to give you the accurate picture, because she has found that people form opinions based on what they imagine, and the imagination is almost always less accurate and more dramatic than the reality. You listen. You do not interrupt. You do not perform an absence of reaction in a way that would itself be a performance. You receive what she is telling you the way you receive information that requires actual processing, without immediate response, with the respect of taking the full time it needs. When she finishes, you say, "Thank you for telling me." She looks at you with a specific expression that you will understand later as the expression of someone who was prepared for almost any response, and was not prepared for that one. You say, "Can I ask you something?" She says yes. You say, "The margin notes on the frittata recipe. Is that how you approach everything?" She looks at you for a long moment. She says, "Yes." You say, "Then I think you're someone I want to keep getting to know, if that's still on offer." She looks at the wine glass. She looks at Cosimo. She says, "It's still on offer." And neither of you says anything else about it that evening, and the evening continues, and Cosimo falls asleep across both your laps with the full weight of an animal who has decided trust is warranted. What you do not do that night, or the following day, or in the weeks that follow, is research her professional name. This is a choice you make consciously and with the understanding that what you would find is a version of her that was created for a purpose and an audience, and that is not the person who makes margin notes on recipes and explains the semiotics of food photography and laughs when a greyhound stops dead for 4 minutes for no apparent reason. You are interested in Jade, not the professional name. These are different people in the way that everyone who has ever held a job is different at work than they are at the farmer's market on a Saturday morning in September, except that her work is the kind that follows a person in ways that most people's work does not. The relationship deepens over the following months in the particular way of something real, not dramatically, not with the manufactured intensity of a connection that is performing itself, but through the specific accumulation of mornings and conversations and the gradual revelation of interior lives. You learn that she reads literary fiction almost exclusively and has opinions about translation that are more sophisticated than most of the literature professors you know. You learn that she grew up watching her mother work 3 jobs simultaneously and that her mother is the person she most admires in the world and that she sends money home to Bakersfield every month with the specific consistency of someone who understands that love is expressed through reliability. You learn that she wants to eventually work in advocacy, specifically around performer rights and healthcare access in the adult industry, which has almost no institutional protection, and that she has been building toward this slowly and deliberately, the same way she approaches everything. You learn that she has a specific relationship with invisibility. Not the kind that comes from being unknown. She is not unknown, she is in fact very publicly known under a name that is not hers in a context that is not her, but the kind that comes from being known entirely wrong. The person people think they know when they search her professional name is a performance constructed for a camera. The person they think they understand when they find out what she does is a projection constructed from their own assumptions. Jade, the actual Jade, the one with the rescue greyhound and the margin notes, and the mother in Bakersfield and the plan for advocacy, has been invisible to almost everyone in her life outside her closest friends. Not because she hides, but because people stop looking once they have the category. The category is the thing they look at. The person behind it becomes peripheral. You refuse to look at the category. This is not a performance of virtue. It is simply that the person is more interesting than the category, which is always true of everyone, but which in her case requires a specific active choice because the category is loud and everywhere and the person requires the patience of actual attention to see. You are 4 months into the relationship when the world intrudes in the first specific way. You are at a birthday party for a colleague in Atwater Village, the kind of sprawling backyard party that LA does well, and you are with Jade, and someone at the party recognizes her professional name, and the recognition moves through a small group of people the way that kind of recognition moves. The glances, the whispers, the particular social reorganization of a room around a piece of information. Jade sees it happen. You watch her see it happen with the expression of someone who has seen it happen many times before and has developed a specific interior response to it that is not quite resignation and not quite indifference, but is the practiced composure of someone who has learned to continue existing with full dignity inside other people's reduction of her. You take her hand. She looks at you. She does not say anything. Neither do you. You stay at the party for another 40 minutes because leaving would be a concession to the reduction, and Jade is not interested in making that concession, and you stay because she stays. And because staying beside someone when the room has reorganized itself around a category is the most specific form of loyalty available. The drive home is quiet in the way that is not absence. She says eventually, "You stayed." You say, "Of course I stayed." She says, "It's not of course. I have lost people over things like that." You say, "Then they were looking at the wrong thing." She is quiet for a moment. She says, "Most people do." You say, "I'm not most people." She looks out the window. She says, "No. You're not." And the city goes by outside and Cosimo is at home waiting and the evening that was almost something else is just the evening. Your family is the second intrusion, which you should have managed better and did not manage at all. You tell your mother about Jade on a phone call in January. Tell her honestly and completely, because your mother is a person who receives information with the specific grace of someone who has decided that love for her children supersedes the comfort of her own assumptions, and you trust her with the accurate picture. Your mother is quiet for a moment. Then she says, "Is she good to you?" You say, "She's better to me than I probably deserve." Your mother says, "Then that's what matters." And you feel the particular relief of a parent who does not make you choose. Your father's response is more complicated, which you anticipated, and the complication takes the form of a 3-week silence and then a conversation that is difficult and honest and ends with your father saying he loves you and is trying, which is the most he has to offer and which you choose to receive as enough. Your friends are various. Some are fine. One is not fine, and the not fine one says something at a dinner that he clearly believes is a sophisticated observation about agency and exploitation, and that is actually just the category dressed up in progressive language, and you say, quietly, without drama, with the particular calm of someone who has thought about this more carefully than the person he is responding to, that he is describing a person he has never met based on information that has nothing to do with her, and that you'd appreciate it if he directed his opinions about the adult industry at the industry rather than at Jade specifically, and the dinner continues. He apologizes 2 days later. You tell Jade. She says, "He apologized?" You say yes. She says, "That's actually rare." You say, "He's a good person having a bad idea." she says. Most people are. Which is both generous and precise, which is how she tends to be. The pregnancy reveals itself on a Thursday morning in February in the bathroom of her Los Feliz apartment. She has been tired in a way that is different from ordinary tired, a specific quality of exhaustion that she cannot attribute to anything in her schedule, and she takes the test with the pragmatic efficiency she brings to everything that requires accurate information. 2 lines. She sits on the edge of the bath for a while. Then she comes out and she tells you because you are there, because you stayed, because you are the person she tells things to now in the way of someone who has decided that you are inside the circle of people who receive the true information. You receive it. You tell her you are in this with her. She looks at you with the assessing before warming expression. She says, "You understand what this means for me specifically?" You say, "Tell me." She says, "I mean my work. The industry. A pregnancy while I'm contracted." She pauses. "I'm going to have to make decisions quickly. There are practical things. Financial things. Things you don't have a framework for because they don't exist in your industry." You say, "Then help me build the framework." She looks at you for a long moment. She says, "Most people want me to have already solved it before I bring it to them." You say, "I'm not most people." She says, "You keep saying that." You say, "Because it keeps being true." The practical decisions are specific and not simple. She has a contract with the production company she works with, not a coercive contract, a professional one, but one with obligations and timelines that the pregnancy complicates. She has to navigate this without the institutional support that other working women in other industries take for granted, because the adult industry in the United States exists in a legal and social space that gives its workers almost no protection, no FMLA, no guaranteed return to the same position, no HR department whose function includes protecting the interests of the person rather than the company. She has an agent. She has a lawyer she found herself paying out of pocket, because she understood early that legal representation in this industry is something you acquire for yourself or you do not have. She has a small financial reserve built over 4 years of working with the discipline of someone who never assumed the income would be permanent. She makes the decisions in the order of their urgency with the clarity of someone who has been managing her own professional life since she was 24 with no institutional support. She notifies the production company. She negotiates the end of her current contract with the lawyer present. She researches her healthcare options because her health insurance, such as it has been, is individual coverage she has paid for herself, and pregnancy coverage under individual plans in California requires understanding before it requires anything else. She does all of this with the matter-of-fact efficiency of someone who has been managing complexity without support for a long time, and who is not going to perform distress for anyone's benefit. You help where you can help and step back where she needs space, and you do not confuse helping with managing because you have learned the difference, which is that helping is what she asks for and managing is what you impose when you are more comfortable with your own action than with her independence. You learn this distinction imperfectly and with corrections. She corrects you without cruelty, and with the specific directness of someone who cannot afford to let imprecision accumulate in a relationship. You receive the corrections. You adjust. This is the actual work of loving someone, and it is not dramatic and it is not glamorous, and it is the thing that determines whether the relationship survives contact with actual life, which this one is now very much in contact with. The world intrudes a third time when someone connects her professional name to her pregnancy. She has not made the pregnancy public. She does not owe the public her pregnancy. But the industry has its observers and its forums, and its particular ecosystem of people who track the professional lives of performers with a thoroughness that has nothing to do with care and everything to do with the specific entitlement that comes from having paid for access to a version of a person, which is not the same as having earned access to the person. A forum post. Social media responses. The particular cruelty of people who have decided that someone who has worked in the adult industry has forfeited the right to a private life, a private body, a private decision about a pregnancy. You read some of it. You should not have read it. It is the most specific and most targeted cruelty you have encountered, and the particular thing about it is that it is directed at someone you know, the person with the margin notes, and the rescue greyhound and the mother in Bakersfield, and the gap between who they think they are talking about and who she actually is produces in you a specific cold anger that you have never felt before about anything. You ask her how she manages it. She says, "I've been managing it for 4 years." You develop a relationship with it. You ask what kind of relationship. She says, "The kind where you understand that it's not about you. The things people say about me in those places, they're not responding to me. They're responding to a character. An idea. I stopped taking it personally when I understood that the person they're directing it at doesn't actually exist." You sit with this. You say, "That must be its own kind of loneliness." She looks at you. She says, "It was. Until recently." She looks at Cosimo. She says, "It matters less when someone can see you." You understand something in that moment that you have been understanding gradually for months without having the complete version of it. The specific thing she has needed, the thing that has been missing from her life not because she lacked worth but because almost everyone around her had defaulted to the category, is to be seen. Not forgiven. Not rescued. Not handled. Seen. The way you see the chard before you decide about it. The way you read the whole recipe before you begin. With the full attention that a person deserves, and that is the beginning of everything. Her mother comes from Bakersfield in April. She is 56 and small and precise, with the specific quality of a woman who raised a daughter alone on 3 jobs and instilled in her, through example rather than instruction, the understanding that competence is not optional and that difficulty is not a reason to stop. She knows what Jade does for work. She has known for 3 years. She has not changed the way she receives her daughter because she has decided, in the particular way of mothers who love their children without conditions attached to the conditions, that her daughter is her daughter. She meets you with the specific assessment of a woman who has been worrying about who would see her daughter correctly for years. The assessment lasts about 20 minutes over coffee in Jade's kitchen. Then she says to Jade, in a way that includes you, "He looks at you right." Jade says, "I know." Her mother says, "Good." And she refills her coffee and asks about the baby's room, and the conversation continues. The baby is a girl. You find out in May at a routine appointment at a Glendale OB practice, and Jade receives the information with the same composure she brings to everything, and you receive it with the specific vertigo of something becoming actual that has been abstract. And on the drive home Jade says, "I want her to know exactly who she is. From the beginning. I spent years not being allowed to be the full version of myself in any room. She gets to be the full version from day one." You say, "We'll build that for her." She says, "Yes. We will." And you understand this is the clearest statement of intention she has made about the future and about what the future contains, which includes you, which is the thing you have been hoping to be included in without knowing how to ask. You name her Rosalind. It is Jade's choice, and then your agreement, and then a shared decision, which is the order of decisions in a relationship where one person has been managing everything alone for long enough that she needs to know she is still capable of managing, and the other person needs to learn when to lead and when to follow. Rosalind, for the Shakespeare character who moves through the world disguised and then, at the right moment, becomes entirely herself. Jade chose it. You looked it up and came back to her and said, "It's perfect." She said, "I know." She has that quality, of knowing things are right before she says them, that you have come to understand is not arrogance but accuracy. Rosalind arrives on a Sunday morning in July at a hospital in Glendale with a Guatemalan-American midwife named Carmen who speaks to Jade with the direct unornamented respect of someone who understands that the woman in front of her has been managing difficult things her whole life and requires support rather than management. Jade's mother is present. You are present. Cosimo is at home with your roommate, who has become, over the course of this year, someone who has reorganized his understanding of what Jade is and who she is through the simple mechanism of actually knowing her, which is what actual knowledge tends to do to assumptions. Jade is extraordinary through the birth in the way that is not surprising and is overwhelming anyway. When Rosalind is placed on Jade's chest, Jade says nothing for a long moment. She just looks. With the complete, present, chard examining attention that is the purest form of her. Then she looks at you and her expression does the thing, assesses, and then warms, except this time the warming is complete, nothing held back, the full version, and she says, "She looks like nobody yet." You say, "She has time." She says, "She has everything." And you understand that this is true in a way that contains everything the year has been, the farmer's market and the margin notes, and the birthday party where you stayed and your father's 3-week silence, and the forum post you should not have read and the mother who said he looks at you right, and the greyhound who is at home making his own peace with the news. 6 weeks later you are in the kitchen of the Los Feliz apartment at 2 in the morning because Rosalind is awake, and when Rosalind is awake someone is awake, and tonight that someone is you. And you are making the loop between the kitchen counter and the window with her against your chest, and the Silver Lake hills are dark outside the window, and the city is doing what LA does at 2 in the morning, which is to be enormous and lit, and somehow both impersonal and entirely personal depending on where you are standing in it. Jade is asleep. You took this shift. You said yes before she finished asking? Rosalind's eyes are open. She is looking at the kitchen light with the complete focused seriousness of someone for whom the kitchen light is genuinely new information, which it is. You think about the farmer's market and the chart and the sentence that most valid reasons aren't complicated. You think about Jade at the birthday party, continuing to exist with full dignity inside other people's reduction of her, and your hand finding hers. You think about her saying it matters less when someone can see you. You think about what it costs a person to be known entirely wrong for years and what it gives back when someone finally gets it right. You think about Rosalind, who she will be, what she will carry, what she will not have to carry because of what her mother decided, and what you have been building together in the particular imperfect ongoing way of things built by two people either of whom has a template. You think about the word advocacy. You think about Jade at her desk in the evenings, working on the things she has been building toward, the performers' rights work, the healthcare access project, the version of herself that will exist in 5 years doing the things she actually came here to do. You think about the margin notes on the frittata recipe, and the way she approaches everything. Read the whole thing first, understand the logic, then execute. You think about what it will mean for Rosalind to grow up watching her mother be the full version of herself in every room. Not the category. Not the reduction. The actual person. The one with the rescue greyhound and the communications degree and the mother she sends money to in Bakersfield and the plan and the margin notes, and the brown eyes that assess before they warm. Rosalind tightens her grip on your finger. You do not move. She gets to be the full version from day one. So does her mother. So, finally, do you? If this story found you somewhere that mattered, subscribe to POV Stories. Every story here is written to find the person behind the category. The next one is already waiting.